Welcome once again. This is the Youth Systems Strengthening Community of Practice, COP meeting. And for this month, we will be hearing from a couple of guest presenters. We'll be digging into what youth systems strengthening is, and we'll be gathering lessons from Mozambique and Tanzania. We'll have the International Youth Foundation sharing with us, and we'll also have Claire also presenting what the Youth Systems Collaborative is all about. Can we move on to the next slide for the introduction? So if you can share in the chat function your name, the organization that you represent, where you are currently, and also answering this question, who are your people? For example, my people can be cat lovers, or my people are students, my people are mothers, or my people are French speakers. Let us know in the chat function. Thank you all. I see a couple of responses so far. That's awesome. Great. Also want to let you know that we are developing a youth charter for this community of practice. The youth charter is a roadmap and action plan that describes what we are all about, what we are trying to achieve, and we want that to be as collaborative as possible. We want to develop this together with your input. And after this meeting, we would be organizing a separate meeting sometime next week or in 2 weeks' time, which will be very short to bring together a couple of members from DCOP to co-develop this youth charter. We would specifically like comments on some parts of the youth charter, such as assumptions and constraints that members of the COP or members of this community of practice might be facing. We also want you to, let us know how you would like to be involved, what roles you would like to take in the COP, and also anything else that you'd like to share. I would share the link to the youth charter with you, but as soon as we share these slides, if you hover around this youth charter, you should be able to find the link to the charter as well. So moving on to handing over to Bonnie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Bonnie Politz, and I'm champion, but co-champion, certainly with Victoria, of this Youth System Strengthening Community of Practice. It's great to see all of you. We have a packed agenda for 1 hour, so we're going to really jump into this. We're going to be focusing on lessons learned from systems change efforts in Tanzania and Mozambique through the work of IYF. But we're going to start, and I just wanted to get all the presenters done, so we're going to go from one right into the next. We're going to start off with Claire Gnatowski, my colleague. Claire and I co-founded the Youth Systems Collaborative several years ago, and we've created a framework through that around systems work that Claire's going to be going into. We've shared it a couple of times on the other webinars, but we're going to go into it a little bit deeper. And what's great is that IYF has used the framework to put together this presentation, their presentations, and to be able to show how the framework can actually be used to track and learn from systems change efforts. So obviously Claire is doing this wonderful work as a senior advisor on youth and youth systems thinking with Creative Associates. We have Tom Brownlee, who is from IYF and a program manager, and Elidio Kafaj, who's from Mozambique, and Joanne Kimere, who is the country director in Tanzania. So you're going to be getting to see all of them, and hopefully we're going to definitely have some time for discussion when we go into some breakouts. So please keep track of your questions. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Who will do a screen share, hopefully. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to present the youth systems framework, and I'll do it briefly, and then it will hopefully come to life in the panel that follows. So the Youth Systems Collaborative is a community of practice of these organizations that was founded in 2017. And we're dedicated to promoting learning on comprehensive systems change efforts that improve the life outcomes of youth. And to do this, we use a case study approach around a common framework. But first, a reminder that we are moving from a project-oriented focus to a systems focus. So a project lens means controlling the inputs and looking for outputs and outcomes in a more or less linear fashion. But in a systems perspective, we're involved in the less predictable process of building sustainable, equitable systems that are locally owned. This is really a more realistic view that takes into account the messiness of change, including many variables and diverse stakeholders with different interests and perspectives, and usually working across multiple sectors. So how do we make sense of this kind of work? It helps to have a framework. And we use a framework because it helps us visualize a complex situation by showing its component parts and how they're connected. It also gives us a common mental model so that we can collaborate across diverse sectors and countries. So the youth systems framework was built from a literature review of domestic US and international experience in comprehensive community change efforts over the past 40 years. So evidence comes from the New Futures Initiative, Harlem Children's Zone, Strive Together, and Collective Impact, just to name a few. This framework is harmonious with the well-known iceberg model that was, I believe, presented in our meeting last month, but it differs in that it includes elements related to development practice. This framework has 3 levels, and I'll go into some more detail in a minute. It consists of domains, which is the space where systems change plays out. Stakeholder collaboration, which is about the relationships among systems actors and is really the heart of the matter. And enablers, which are actions that we take to understand and nudge the system to change. So now let's look a little bit more in depth, beginning with domains. And starting with policies at the top. So policies include laws, standards, regulations that make up the formal system that affect youth. And sometimes good policies are in place, but they're not well implemented or aligned. Services includes all the opportunities, supports, networks, and information that youth need to be successful. Practices refer to the behaviors of either those who are in direct contact with youth, such as teachers and family members, as well as the indirect effect that the practices of institutions have. So norms and mindsets are positioned at the bottom because they're often deeply held and invisible. So they are the values, cultural models, and beliefs that underlie policies and practices. For example, gender norms are often deeply held, but they can be shifted. Resources refer to the financial and in-kind investments needed to support youth. And so as we understand it, no single actor is responsible. It's a shared responsibility across many institutions. So although these domains are depicted as separate, they're actually interconnected. So for example, policy shapes how services are delivered, and norms and mindsets inform policy. So by necessity, our work toggles back and forth across these. Stakeholder collaboration is about the relationships among core stakeholders who are responsible for the infrastructure that youth need to succeed. So this is typically government, the private sector, NGO, community groups, and of course, youth themselves are stakeholders. So under the right conditions, these stakeholders can overcome problem blindness and commit to taking steps towards meaningful change. Backbone organizations help facilitate this collaboration. So enablers, again, are the actions that we take to nudge the system to change. So starting with vision and goals, a vision is a shared image of what we would like to see created with and for young people. It's backed up by high-level goals that concretize what success looks like by setting targets. They're jointly held across the entire network of partners and are the glue that holds the collaborative work together. So we know that we can't change or improve a system until we can understand it, including its gaps, its unintended consequences, and power imbalances. So systems mapping can be more or less formal as a learning process, as long as it is participatory. Capacity development involves helping actors, system actors, and networks to be able to adapt their practices as new information emerges or conditions change. And technical knowledge is not the only capacity that's needed. There's also a range of leadership and facilitation skills, which are fostered best through safe spaces and hands-on experience, coaching, and peer exchange. And finally, data, learning, and evaluation are critical to systems change. A resilient system is one in which actors value knowledge, data, and evidence and apply them continuously to the change process. So this is a quick taste of the youth systems framework. And there'll be a fuller description coming out in July in the form of an article in the Journal of Youth Development. And we have the galley proofs for that already. If you would like to see it sooner than July, you can email Bonnie or Victoria, and we're happy to share that with you. Otherwise, it will be publicly available at the end of July. And so at this point, I will turn it over to Tom from IYF, who will present the systems learning from the VIA project. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claire, and thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Bonnie, for inviting us to share our learnings from the VIA program. I'm going to start by sharing a background on the program. What is VIA Pathways to Work? And then use the domains that Claire just shared to share some of the learnings. But we have a chance to really dive deep in some breakouts that will follow this this presentation. So looking forward to that discussion. Firstly, just really glad to be participating in a learning forum like this. On the VIA program, you know, I often use the analogy of we kind of turn the ship during the program. We initially were trying to do it all, have those traditional linear elements as well as the more systems change elements. But as we learned more about systems programming, systems change, taking a systems approach, we shifted more in that direction, and we learned a lot through that process. I wouldn't say that we fully got the boat turned around, but we learned a lot through the process, and this is a great opportunity to share some of that. I'll just ask, we'll have a couple minutes for quick questions at the end and then discussion. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or hold them till the end. Great, so the VIA Pathways to Work program is implemented by IYF in partnership with MasterCard Foundation in Mozambique and Tanzania. Started in October 2015, and we're closing this year. Next slide, please. So through the VIA program, national TVET institutions and entrepreneurship partners in Mozambique and Tanzania equipped over 22,000 young people with work readiness, life skills, career guidance, and/or entrepreneurship training. And the graduates were more likely to secure permanent wage employment, earn increased income, and report increased satisfaction with their careers. But more importantly, and if you go to the next slide, please, IYF capacitated staff and partners, oops, sorry, the one before this. Thank you. IYF capacitated staff and partners to strengthen their trainer pedagogy, training staff on providing career guidance, life skills, job placement, monitoring and data management, and engaging the private sector. And VIA TVET partners are intentionally and systematically integrating these services in order to better serve the hundreds of thousands of young people that pass their systems each year. So this diagram helps highlight how the collective behavior of the TVET system actors, represented by the outer circle, is critical to ensuring that young people can realize improved economic opportunities. So the pathway in the middle represents the many different pathways that young people take on their journey and transition from school to work, and the many different barriers that they have to hurdle on their way to be successful in the world of work. So what we worked with our TVET partners, which was our primary entry point for the program, in strengthening capacity of the TVET institutions, improving trainer pedagogy, and integrating those quality life skills and career services. Next slide, please. So Glory would be one of the young people who took this journey, and a quote from her says, I currently make a lot of decisions at my workplace. My life skill set has enabled me to make choices with positive consequences for the company. And then here, a quote from a principal at one of the TVET centers. Via Pathways to Work supported the government's development strategy to reform the TVET sector and meet the skill requirements of a growing economy. Curriculum has now been developed further within the TVET system. So this transitions us nicely to talk about the center of the framework. And I'll mostly focus on the domains at the outside. We can talk about all of these elements if it weren't for time, but I did want to start at the center, because this really is key, the stakeholder collaboration part, and it's in exactly the right place in the framework. We talk about collaboration in a few different ways. One, between IYF and stakeholders during the program. Two, between stakeholders within the institutions, and three, between institutions and actors. I would say number three is really what we're talking about on a systems change program, is trying to strengthen the networks and information flows, building bonds between those different institutions, different actors, different stakeholders. But I wanted to note that the number one is so important, and any success on this program is due to the relationship built between our country office staff and our partner staff. And so that collaboration is integral to any of these steps being taken and any of this change being initiated. And one thing we didn't expect was the importance of stakeholder collaboration within institutions. So these TVET institutions in both countries are huge national institutions, and information doesn't always flow between the headquarters and the centers and the zonal offices and the delegates and of course the youth themselves and the students themselves. So that piece was an important component and a way to think about the stakeholder collaboration as well. And there's always challenge in changing personnel. It made the project quite iterative. So in Tanzania, BETA had, which is the national TVET there, had 4 director generals in the first 4 years. In Mozambique, we started this partnership with the national institution called NFP, which in the first year split into 2, IFPLAC, which focused on technical training, and INEP, which focused on career guidance and career services. So these changes, happened and are unpredictable, and it does mean that we had to plan and adapt, plan to be iterative and plan to adapt and be adaptive as we went through. And we were fortunate to have an adaptable partner in MasterCard Foundation, which allowed us to do that. Also a note about Youth Voice, as Claire mentioned, essential stakeholder in the system, and we did work with young people in terms of amplifying their voice in the TVETs, making sure they were heard. Not only we were listening to them, but the TVET decision makers were listening to them as well. Definitely an opportunity to do more, and look forward to talking about that more in the discussions. Next slide, please. So I'll start talking about the domains and want to start with services and practices. So this is where we introduced life skills and career guidance services in the TVET institutions, trained staff, but really had traction around when we got to a point where our partners were adapting those curricula and services. One thing that's really important in this process is working with existing structures, right? So we weren't recruiting separate cohorts of young people into separate trainings. These were young people already signing up to receive training and receive their technical training at the TVETs. And we weren't creating new staff or new positions or new structures to deliver this, but working with those organizations that were there. And aligning with the priorities, as which links to that quote from the principal that I shared earlier, that the institution already has. But one note and one challenge is that an institution or a government might have a priority or a stated priority or stated mission, but it's not necessarily held by every single individual within that institution. So working with individuals and really having multiple entry points was key. Sometimes we had more traction at the national level, sometimes at a regional level, and sometimes at centers with management or with trainers. So having those multiple entry points was really essential in bringing that together as time went on over the program. So we did introduce these services and practices at select centers, and then building that buy-in with trainers, staff, and students, which took time. and then partners have led efforts to adapt and modify to make it their own. And that's something I'll be coming back to as we talk. In Tanzania, we have our PTS life skills curriculum, which we introduced, and they've adapted to Keys to Success, which is their own life skills curriculum that fits their needs and fits their parameters. And now they own and are taking forward and rolling out. In Mozambique, we're working likewise with PTS with NEP, their curriculum authority, which Lydia will go into more detail in the breakout group. And they're working with NEP, formed a consortium and consolidated various life skills curricula that were being used throughout the system. So there's one integrated, strong, quality life skills curriculum that is NEP's own curriculum that they approved last year. Next slide, please. All right, norms and mindsets. I'm glad Claire touched on something I was going to say, which is, the norms. This is deep. This is the hardest part to get to, and the hardest part to measure. I'll talk about a few ways that mindset shift comes up on VIA. One is the mindset shift of students and trainers, and we hear that a lot from leadership of our partners as well as families and employers. And that was a stated goal of the curricula of the training. The mindset shift among leadership on the purpose and priorities of TVETs. This is around thinking of the purpose of the TVET as, okay, is to just deliver the technical training, get people in, get people out, right? And they receive their technical training. But shift that to what we're really trying to do is equip young people to be successful. Any of the students who pass through, they're successful when they leave here and after they have left. And so that's where we have seen some positive findings in our outcome harvesting evaluation that was recently completed around the value that's seen in work readiness skills among TVET actors. But the last one I think is important for this whole group and this framework and this discussion around mindset shift on programming. Again, traces back to what Claire was sharing, and that linear versus systemic approach, and the really time-bound versus the long-term view. And this is when I talked about sort of moving the ship. This is where we had to change our mindset as IYF, both here in the US, as well as our country office colleagues and staff, as well as our partners that are used to working with different projects, where we could have prioritized reaching higher numbers of young people in the 5 years of the program, and maybe prioritize more intensive training and services for that period of time. But then it would have dropped off after the 5 years. So it was a mindset shift to say, no, our priority is really that integration of these curricula, the sustainability of that, and what does that mean for our choice of where we put these funds or where we spend our time. And it kind of traces back to the stakeholder collaboration, because more time and effort and funds towards engaging our partners, working with stakeholders, having those meetings with ministry level staff and institutions. Right, next one, thank you. All right, on policy, so some good progress here. Like I mentioned, the ANEP in Mozambique was approved the consolidated curriculum. In Tanzania, the beta zonal offices have approved the life skills curricula. We're working with the Teachers Training College, who's also approved it in their curriculum, and likewise with the headquarters as well. And headquarters also showed increased interest near the end of the program in the career services. So that really escalated quickly in terms of approvals and institutionalization there. But a common thread was finding the right entry point. And sort of a common theme is how much time that takes and how that's related to the relationship building. Of course, necessary to work with those existing structures, but understanding who really holds the authority, who holds the approval, who needs to be part of this conversation. And we would get mixed messages sometimes. So somebody within the organization would say that you need to do this, and this is the date where we need to, this person needs to feed in, or this person needs to approve the budget. Yep, just another minute here, Bonnie. And but that wouldn't necessarily be the case. Talk to somebody else and have different information. So that's a challenge that we encountered through both the policy, and if we go on to the next slide on the budget, same challenge, right? Where you get mixed information, it takes time to build that trust, build those relationships, and to really understand the system, which is again an iterative process. So some positive progress on VIA on the budgets. Tanzania centers working with the zonal offices have incorporated the costs of the additional services into their course fees, validated by students, families, trainers, and the institution. And Mozambique, because the curriculum was approved by the Education Authority, that the expectation is that will be incorporated into the July budget. So this is ultimately where the evidence of sustainability will lie. So we've seen positive indication, positive steps, but the question will be 5 years from now, are these services still being funded, and to what degree and to what level of quality? And so again, to again tie back to something that Claire was sharing around the timelines here, is different than a typical program, and really these are generational shifts rather than a 3, 4, 5 year project. Great, so that's my big information download on the VIA program. I know there's probably plenty of questions. I'm going to hand it over to Bonnie now, and she can take us through the next steps there.
Thank you so much, Tom. I mean, it's great to sort of, having worked on this framework for a couple of years, certainly Claire has been the primary worker on it, is to see it sort of come alive through these case examples is what we were hoping for. So thank you for that. And thanks to the folks from Tanzania and Mozambique for all this great work. So we wanted to see if there were any top line questions. If you want to raise your hand or let us know in some way. We do have one question that came in earlier prior to the call that we can jump into, but if somebody wanted to ask a specific question right now before we go into the breakouts, that would be great. I'll wait like just 30 seconds, and if not, I'm going to ask the question that came in from the discussion board. So Sylvia, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Good morning, how are you? Nice to see you, Bonnie, and everybody. Yes, I had a question about if you—
Could you introduce yourself real quickly?
Sorry, yes, Sylvia Ellison. I am at Creative Associates. and I'm the Director of Knowledge Management. So I was curious about whether the project engaged in any formal systems mapping activity in preparation for implementing this project, and then once you started implementation, how did you address that?
Great question. Yes, so we conducted, working with an organization called Market Share Associates, conducted a systems analysis in the second year of the program. That included mapping of actors in the youth employability system, and which was a fruitful exercise and got us kind of kicked off in this direction and really helped us understand, what we mean when we talk about systems change and that process. If I were to do the program over again, I would have, we would start with that on before we started the project. Good question.
Any others? If not, we did have a question from Kanyaradzwa in Zimbabwe about how can we build sustainable resilience by youth participation in these processes? Is there something in specific that you learned about youth participation in this?
I'll start, and happy for any of my colleagues to jump in if they want to add on. Yeah, I mean, it is really critical, and it is interesting because it's a youth program, but our entry point is the TVETs, right? Our entry point is working with principals and trainers primarily. So we did do work with young people in terms of elevating youth voice in that process, including youth in fora when we would get together employers and TVET actors, etc. Bringing them into the sustainability planning sessions with the TVETs to tell their stories and to advocate for their needs. The Tanzania team did some really great work on You Speak, Kijana Ongea, where using different mediums, so video diaries and TV shows, where broadcast young people talking to young people about issues they're experiencing in the TVET space, challenges, their successes, what they've used to overcome challenges and barriers. So and filtering that up to the decision makers, right, in the system. I think where there can be more done is it's a two-sided process, right? So you can elevate youth voice or anybody's voice as much as you want and give platforms, but it's also who's hearing it and who's listening and how that's intentionally incorporated into decision-making processes. So I think there's more that could be done for that when thinking systemically and sustainably. So again, we did some work there at the end with trainings of some of the youth leadership structures that exist in the TVETs, and trying to better equip them and better link them with more frequent information flows between young people and decision makers in the TVETs. But I think there's more opportunity and more work to be done on that front.
Great. Well, we're going to take thank you. And Lisa Loxman asked a similar question. So I hope that helped in terms of curious how youth's voices were involved. And as you get into the breakouts, maybe there's going to be a little bit more opportunity. But we are going to break up into two groups, one focused on Mozambique, one focused on Tanzania. Joanne will be leading the group on Tanzania, and Lydia will be doing it on Mozambique. So we're going to give you the opportunity. We're going to have about hopefully 15 minutes for you to be in there speaking with the folks directly who have been involved in these on the ground and some of their systems learnings. And then we'll come back for a very brief recap and then end up. So thank you, everybody. And we can go into the breakouts now. You can choose.
So I've just opened the breakout rooms. If you look on the bottom of your screen, there should be something that popped up that says breakout. and you should be able to self-select into the room that you want to go into. If you are having trouble picking the room, please just chat me or come off mute and I can put you in the room you prefer.
Breakout's not showing up on the screen.
It's not showing up.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at the bottom of your window,
That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at the bottom of the window.
Yeah,
It's not there.
It's not coming.
okay, Victoria made it. I don't know how she did it.
I think it's showing on my side. Probably you could check maybe because I'm my co-host.
Yeah, let me try closing them and opening them again. Did anything pop up now at the bottom of your screen?
No.
Okay. Well, we don't have too many people if you all want to tell me.
And maybe what we should do is we're going to be like on the spot doing this. How about Joanne, maybe you could start with just what you were going to be presenting. We'll give each of you like, a certain amount of time quickly and then see if there's folks who have questions specifically about what's going on in your country.
Thank you. I just wanted to share in terms of, the process that we did, the partners that we worked with, and also how we did that, and then the challenges that we had during this program.
Sure, if you want to quickly go through that, because we're going to have to also do Alivio because we sort of can't do both going into their own breakouts. So sure, jump in.
Okay, so we work with two partners in Tanzania, VETA, which is a national institution for TVET, and then we also work with Tanzania Entrepreneurship Competitiveness Center. This particular institution deals with entrepreneurship and working with young people through that. And our work with them was to, for the VETA, was to integrate the life skills, career guidance, and job placement within their system, as well as for the tech, we did the same thing. Let me just put part of the challenges was really to get champions who can push this work very clearly, and also to champion activities that were needed to get this working. And also another challenge was that changes in terms of policies and also in terms of people who are running institutions, that has given us backlog in terms of moving forward. But what are the success on that is that we had the integration of life skills, career guidance, and job placement within these two institutions.
So are there any specific questions anybody has for, work that was going on in Tanzania for Joanne? Related to the framework or a specific piece, policy, budget, mindset? Okay, well, if not, I'm going to say, Lydia, why don't you give a little overview of what was going on in Mozambique and what you learned?
Thank you, Bonnie. Mozambique is not very different than what happened in Tanzania. We worked with the TVET system. Our focus was to create an enabling environment for the system to change, to offer better quality of service for young people in vocational training centers in 4 different provinces of the country. At the other side, we had also entrepreneurship approach that was looking for to give opportunities for young people who are more in agriculture side and make agriculture more sexy to young people. And we created hydroponic units through a process that we went through a consultation with the stakeholders, with young people, with the many actors of the agriculture area in Mozambique, and they suggested that we could implement these hydroponic units, which is there and already established, and we have association of young people involved in the process of the creation of this, and they're running now these units. At the other side, we have also career guidance services through the employment centers. So let me put some 3 or 4 challenges that we have faced. If you have followed what the presentation from Tom, you realize that it was a split at the beginning of the program. We started with the enough, and then they split in 2. That made us look at how do we adapt to that? Instead of having one approach, we had 2 different approaches for 2 different institutions, which is also a very challenging thing. That was the first challenge. The second challenge that I could say here is about the services and practice. The time for adoption and adaptation of the new curriculum for life skills, that take time and needed the institution to be ready to look at we were looking at the training people in technical side, but now we need to add on some activities on behavior change, behavior attitudes, and all these things. So it took a little bit of time for them to accept that, we're no longer just training for technical purpose, but also for young people to be able to get jobs in a way that it can be more acceptable. The standards of the status at the end of the training will be the most closer to the needs of the market. So that took time, but at least after this 5 years, we can assure that this is something that YP2LE is taking and is doing very well. And the third challenge, we then designed we took the life skills curriculum to the TVET system. At the beginning, it was only on the 4 vocational training center, and then we had to put it available to the whole system. That took us to work with different stakeholders, with the potential competitors, to be together, and together with potential competitors, draft a new curriculum, which has a lot of our PTS, because our life skills curriculum is very strong. We have had 100 lessons, 1 hour each, and no one else in the consortium would be able to beat that. But at the same time, they have different interests. One wanted to put on entrepreneurial modules more than the other, and the other one wanted gender, and that we need to look at all the interests of potential competitors in the market and design one only curriculum and submit to ANEP, which was approved in December. And now we're rolling out with the process of drafting the manual. So the challenge here was, you have a competitor, you have to fall in love with your competitor and be one and bring in one piece of work that will change the life of young people. The other challenge is the bigger one in terms of the norms and mindset. The mindset shift from the TVET system to move from quantitative approach to a more systemic systems change approach, from solo interventions to collective synergic interventions. That take a long time. In 5 years, we can consider that we have given a good stride, but we need to continue. If we could have more 10 years, that would be perfect for us to really finish this. So in a nutshell, one thing that we have learned about the participation of the young people is that, Tom have said everything. I want just say one other thing. When a young person starts a vocational training course, he is in a kind of channel where we have him at the center of everything. Whatever we change, we have young people. We consult young people. We ask them what they feel all the time throughout the process, and then we do the follow-up after he left. And we don't leave him until we are sure that he might have got a job. I can tell you that 72% of our young people have achieved, they are actively occupied. 43% of them, they have jobs, and 28% they are continuing studying, and only 28% are not working. So this is a good figure if you look at the process. But all the time we have the young people giving back information to the system so that we can change from inside and make it better for the next young people who comes to the system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were both really helpful. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Eliza, would you like to, I see your questions. Would you like to unmute yourself and sort of just share the questions and see whoever else of the two would like to answer?
Sure, thanks, Bonnie. Hi, it's been really great hearing about all of this great work that you guys have been doing in Mozambique and Tanzania. Thank you so much. I'm just curious to learn a
Eliza,
little bit.
could you just introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sure, thanks. Yeah, my name is Eliza Chard and I work for Creative Associates. And I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about sort of the bridging to the next phase after skill building. So I know a lot of the really challenging work, you know, you guys have already talked about in terms of mindset shifts and, you know, getting soft skills integrated into curricula. But I was curious to learn more about how you're actually, how you've been able to help support young people making that jump from education to work. And it would be helpful, I think, thinking about it sort of in two chunks, because even though, you know, we often are forced to lump employment and entrepreneurship together, they actually, as we all know, require very different kinds of support systems. So I was wondering if you could speak kind of at one point to, you know, how you bridge to the workforce and work with the private sector to support employment, and then, you know, kind of recognizing the economic reality. You're probably also supporting a lot of young people to become entrepreneurs. So, which I think is particularly challenging because of the complexity of all the different things that a young person needs in order to be set up for success in entrepreneurship, including access to finance, mentorship, and business development services. So I was wondering if you could speak to that, and particularly on the entrepreneurship side, if you found any ways of doing that in a way that's actually sustainable after the end of the project, because that's always a challenge. So would love to hear a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Eliza. So Lydia or Joanne or Tom, you have anything you'd like to?
I'll go first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So in Tanzania, working with Tanzania Entrepreneurship Competitiveness Center, they themselves were doing the entrepreneurship training, the BDS and all that, you know, they need to train young people in terms of being entrepreneurs. What we brought on the table was life skills, but another component that was added was mentorship, which we could say it was a new concept. We were working with them, but it has been a very helpful concept in terms of getting establishes businesses for them to support the young people, to mentor them, and to create a pool of mentors who will take all the mentees who were going through institution and to understand their business and to work around that. Another thing that was a challenge and we tried to was also access to finance. As is known in many areas, yes, young people have ideas and they can start their businesses, but most of the businesses sometimes fail because of, you know, access to finance. So this was being able to being supportive under the government. So there is a scheme within government, within the local government, where young people can be able to access loan. However, that also had its own challenges because it was not individual giving for each person, and, you know, different groups of young people had different ideas. So they wanted to have these young people to be in groups, and that provided a very big challenge because each person had individual ideas and they had individual businesses. So part of what Tech is continuing to do after this program is to make sure that if there is a way that that policy can be changed so that young people can be able to access finance within their own idea rather than having a group mentality where it's very difficult to handle and to support young people. And one other thing that has helped the young people particularly in Tanzania, in the institution that we have worked with, is people will go there with the idea. So the idea was really being more, let's say, evaluated and understood, and then giving support of somebody else who is actually doing similar business or the same business. How can they expand it? And couple that with life skills for the young people. Sometimes, you know, they didn't know the meaning of, you know, being there on time and customer service and all that. So when they finished, they came up with all these other extra skills that they were able to support them within the area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lydia, did you want to?
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. Yes, you know, first of all, YF takes the systems approach very serious in terms of we don't bring solutions and leave. We don't plug in and plug off. What we do is we look at the system, the whole stakeholders involved, and try to work in a situation where everyone we can be complementary one another. And in that term, in terms of entrepreneurship, what we did is to really recognize that there are there series of services that the government is offering already within the INEP is National Employment Institute, and what we did is to, you know, do the vocational training, then take the people through the channels that the INEP has created, and we send them to internship programs. They have a large internship program going on, and they put young people in that, and also they give some startup kits for initial, the basic equipment that they need to start entrepreneurial activity. What we did is to reinforce this scheme with what we want to call in Portuguese POP, Percurso de Orientação Profissional, which is in English, I would say it's career guidance pathways, where you have the young person going to the employment center and doing the interview, going through a process. And what we did is co-design with them a new approach. We implemented within this system the curriculum, which our curriculum called My Career, My Future, within this. So they have a number of 10 lessons, because employment centers didn't have this kind of collective service. They were one by one interviews, and you were set to the employment only that after they recognized that in the labor market they're looking for someone like you. But we needed to have more than that. And one of the services that we offer is a collective way of going through a training, a collective group of young people through different lessons, which are designed to take you to the labor market. They give information about the labor market. They give you they show you the potential you have to get jobs here and there. That's one thing. But then we have created another project, which is the one we've created, through which we've created 3 hydroponic units. This is a project where the young people went there and started learning about agriculture, but not the traditional agriculture, but the one that you do in house, let's say. We built those houses. We put young people going through the process of learning first life skills, and then they went from financial skills and hydroponics type of training to operate those units. And now, and at the same time, at the end of this process, they have created an association of young people who are sitting there and explore the potential of these units under assistance of GAPI. GAPI is another organization which we work with. So this is the process that gave the young people a little bit more of services around them so that they could be could improve their entrepreneurial skills. So in a nutshell, this is what we do. I think Tom can add something on top of what we said here, if you have something.
Happy to, though. Also looking at time, so I'm looking at Bonnie in case.
1 more minute.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's a really good question in terms of the entrepreneurship sustainability, and I think one area that we've discussed a lot on the program is it was originally seen as 2 pathways. I think you're right in that it is different skills, but there are some overlapping skills. And then, working with TVETs, a lot of the graduates go into self-employment afterwards, or they're in mixed livelihoods, right? They have some component, even if they do get a job at some point, or it's part-time work, and they're doing self-employment as well. So I think there's more opportunity to bring those business development skills, access to finance, mentorship into that TVET space. So the skills and inputs that Joanne and Lydia were talking about, it is I think still an ongoing challenge on how to make that more sustainable. They're right in terms of we were working with entrepreneurship partners, and those partners are still going, and that's really positive. And I think there's ways to bring that more aligned with the TVET actors as well, and the entrepreneurs that they graduate out of there. One last thought on that is we often talk about career guidance as wage employment, or career guidance trainings and services are often geared towards that. But one thing we were intentional on is making sure that self-employment was part of that conversation as well. So that there's not illusions or poor information in terms of a specific context, where if you're taking a plumbing course and most of the graduates go into self-employment, that's great, that's fine. That should be the conversation and the career path and the options laid out in front of somebody who's signing up for that course, not just focus on this is the wage job that might not exist after graduation.
Well, that's great. Look, these hour-long calls sometimes have a little bit of frustration attached to them. I think there's a few people on who we could continue digging into this. And please, on the discussion board, please put up any other questions related to this. And I think we're going to try and do something a little different maybe with this recording of this one to try and get it out to the broader. We have probably about 60 or 65 people signed up, and only like 20 came on, and we've been down in the numbers. So we got to think of a different way to get this information out, but also any input you may have about the charter that makes sure that what we've got in there is going to continue to build this. And we'll send out, as Victoria said, a link to have a short call to try and dig in a little bit to the charter to make sure it's something we all can work from. So I wanted to thank everybody in terms of IYF's both presentation, preparation. I loved, Lydia, what you said about falling in love with your competitors. I think when we're talking about the whole mindset and about collaboration, it's probably one of the biggest and the hardest parts of all of this work of thinking about systems change is how do you bring people to the table who you might not agree with, but is there a core that you can start from about where you want to go that everybody could agree on and build from that? So lots more to learn. And Tom put up some more links about more learnings from VIA. So thank you to that. And we will see you again in July and August and September. And hopefully we'll continue to grow this. And please let other people know about this and who you'd like to share the information with. So thank you to Claire and Tom and Elidio and Joanne and Victoria. Anything else you'd like to say before we go? Okay.
No, but I just want to remind everyone, I just put the link to the youth chatter again in the chat function. We'll figure out a time when we can all meet, but before then, everyone is welcome, to drop a comment.
Yes, send us your comments, it's fine. But we're trying to get this, we've done sort of what we hope is close to a final draft, but we definitely would like more input. So thank you all so much. And enjoy your day and summertime wherever you are. If it's summertime, it could be wintertime where you are. So, okay. See you later.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.